February, aka the time when everything gets all lovey-dovey and I am confronted once again with the fact that I am asexual, and that makes dating rather difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. So, if I don't have a human with whom to share this most oversaturated of holidays, what do I have? Well, I got food, and I got my show, and got movies. I've got my not so healthy fixation with all things Natalie Portman related, and I've got musicals. And, I mean, I've always had a thing about musicals, but it started as, like, just Disney, you know? And then something happened. Something called Rent. In retrospect, it probably wasn't the best idea for me to get into Rent when I was in middle school, but that's when it happened, and, well, for better or worse, I broke up with Rent in order to start doing Phantom of the Opera related stuff, and well, you've seen how that turned out. But did you guys hear that they did, like, a Rent thing, like, last week or something? Yeah, I wasn't watching it. I was more interested in seeing Rami Malek take away a statue from Christian Bale and Bradley Cooper. I'll give my thoughts on award season at a later point. I don't know, I haven't seen everything this year. So anyway, I have fallen out of love with Rent quite a bit since my middle school Rent phase, but most of what I have issues with could easily be summed up by spending a good 45 minutes watching Lindsay Ellis tear it to shreds, so go do that if that is your thing, although if you're watching me, you've probably already seen Lindsay's videos, which are 1,000 times better. But, yeah, so I didn't watch the broadcast when it was originally happening, but I decided to hunker down and watch it a couple of days later, and I got some things to say. So, number one, understudies. Like, every theater person in the world was screaming understudy when we found out that Brennan Hunt wasn't going to be able to perform live because he broke his foot. And yes, I'm sorry that he broke his foot, but this is a convention of theater. The show must go on. They acknowledge that, so that's why you get understudies. You know, the live shows of the 25th anniversary of Phantom of the Opera and Les Mis both hit this wall, but do you know what they did? They brought in Katie Hall to replace Camilla Kerslake, and they brought in Kiara Duffy to replace Wendy Ferguson. And nobody cared, because the show was still live and it was still good. But apparently X Factor contestants are in short supply, so pre-recorded whatever. Now that the theater nerd in me has gotten that off my chest, it was Rent. It was just, first of all, you shouldn't do Rent if you have to censor it. Censoring Rent takes out what works about it. If you're a fan of Rent, or you know as much of the score of Rent as I do, the changes stick out like a sore thumb, and it's just awkward and painful. I'm sure if this is somebody's first experience with Rent, it's fine, but no, just Rent was not a show made for TV, and if you're going to want to watch a live performance of it, I would say go watch the recorded version from the original Broadway production. I was about to say cast, it's not the original Broadway cast, but it is a great cast. Adam Cantor, Will Chase, Renee Elise Goldsberry, Eden Espinosa, all wonderful, wonderful theater actors who deserve a ton of more work in the future. Not that this cast was bad. I didn't know a lot of them, which to me just says that I'm not up and hip with the times or whatever, but the people who had Broadway pedigrees were clearly the ones who actually knew what they were doing. So Jordan Fisher, Brandon Victor Dixon, Kiala Settle, they were all fantastic, and I'm only just getting into drag culture, so I think Valentina did a really good job, and I will circle back to her, but Vanessa Hudgens, I guess she's not bad for Maureen, and I will say this, I prefer her to Idina Menzel, but only because I think Idina Menzel has become vastly overrated since Frozen happened. The biggest thing that I want to talk about why this production of Rent was at all worthwhile is the fact that they actually, I think somebody on their team might have watched Lindsay's video and was like, hey, yeah, maybe we should do more with the whole AIDS thing. So we see a lot more of the iconography of the AIDS and the riots that were actually, you know, happening at that time. In particular, we see the pink triangle and silence equals death, and there's more slogans that were being chanted at rallies and protests from that era. And they were also, I think, they handled Angel better. Angel is not misgendered in this production by anybody who loves her. There was always sort of a disconnect for me, and so to see Angel's pronouns more readily accepted and people correcting themselves when they misgendered her, that was definitely something I appreciated. But, I don't know, it didn't quite hit the right chord. Maybe because it's a modern convention that they are trying to move back to 1991 when we were only just, like, really starting to get into that wave of understanding gender. And I'm not saying that, like, pronoun changes with a transgender identity weren't a thing, but people were worse about it then in terms of accepting it than they are now, and they're still not good at it now. I want to talk about this in relation to something else that I saw. I saw Head Over Heels on Broadway right before it closed, and if you don't know, Head Over Heels is a musical that is based on Sir Philip Sidney's Arcadia, which is an Elizabethan prose poem, and set to the music of the Go-Go's. And it is an absolutely fantastic work that I am so grateful I got the chance to see before it closed. And it is also noteworthy in that it features the first openly trans performer to originate a principal role on Broadway, and that was drag queen Peppermint in the role of Pythio. I'm going to do my best to explain this without spoiling. In Head Over Heels, the character of Pythio is non-binary and uses the pronouns of they, them, and while there's a little quibbling when they're first introduced, once those pronouns are established, they are never misgendered, and Head Over Heels is great about that in general. It is great for gender identity and sexual identity. It maybe has a little work to do in the racial category. It falls into the whole colorblind casting, accidentally reinforcing some stereotypes, but you know what, I will save my thoughts on that for a later discussion. The point is that I don't think Rent Live could have gone as far as it went with respecting the pronouns of Angel and Angel's gender identity if we hadn't taken the stepping stones to get from original Rent through, like, the prom and Head Over Heels to now. I'm sure La Cage aux Folles fits in there somewhere, but barely. I bring up La Cage specifically because it is the only musical to have won both Best Musical and Best Revival, and that makes it special somehow. So yeah, the gender identity politics in Rent have definitely improved, which I think is a sign of why we need intersectional feminism. We need to consider the interlocking facets of identity, gender, race, sex, all of it. That being said, they couldn't change the sexual politics without, well, changing more of the scripts than they would have been willing to. So Mimi still kind of sucks. Maureen definitely still sucks. I don't care what kind of cult Vanessa Hudgens has. And Joanne deserves better. And I mean, Maureen kind of deserves better too in that she deserves to be depicted as more than just Slutty McSlutterson, but that would have required an actress who's better than Vanessa Hudgens. So with all that being said, do I think Rent Live was a complete bomb? No. There were parts of it that were good and improved on the source material, and there were parts of it that were clearly just not well thought out. And world, stop. Idina Menzel is a thing. Stop trying to make her more of a thing. Can we just let her go? Let her go.
Merci beaucoup for watching. Please be sure to like, leave comments, share, and subscribe. I would love to make these videos more often, but to do that, I need your help fending off the YouTube algorithm.
Man, it takes a lot to get the purple out. Please consider joining my Patreon. You get special benefits like future episode requests, cameo opportunities, and early access to all videos. Plus, more money makes me able to produce more stuff. So, It's just a win-win for everybody. Alright, well, I will see you soon. A bientôt!